All right, let's dive into a book that's got everyone talking, Haruki Murakami's Kafka on the
It's
Shore.
a real head scratcher, huh?
Yeah, and we've got some analysis to guide us through it, so we'll be exploring, well, the context and the themes and all the symbolism that make this book, well, pick,
Oh,
basically,
it's definitely ticking.
and why it's so popular, I guess. We're talking cats, prophecies, all that subconscious stuff. You in?
Absolutely. Kafka on the Shore, it's considered a masterpiece of modern lit. It shows like Murakami's skill at blending genres, right? He mixes that magical realism with deep philosophical and psychological stuff.
Not your average coming-of-age story.
No, not at all.
Let's get to the characters. We've got two whose paths, intertwine in unexpected ways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's Kafka Tamura. He's 15. He runs away from home, and he's kind of haunted by this dark prophecy about his future.
Intense.
Yeah, and then we have Satoru Nakata, older guy, but get this, he can talk to cats.
Oh, I love that.
I know, right? So how does Murakami bring those two very different lives together?
Well, he's so good at, building these separate narratives that kind of like slowly come together. And you start to see these like subtle connections between Kafka trying to, run from his destiny and Nakata just searching for a missing cat.
Mm.
And as they go on these journeys, things get blurry. Like what's real and what's a dream, It messes with you as a reader, makes you question what you see and experience.
Speaking of messing with perceptions, let's get into those big themes running through the story.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the biggest is this whole fate versus free will thing, right?
Hmm.
Kafka's trying so hard to outrun this creepy prophecy, it makes you think. Do we control our lives, or are we just, like, playing a part in some bigger cosmic game?
Right.
Murakami doesn't make it easy for you. You gotta wrestle with those questions, just like the characters.
Exactly. And it's not just outside forces, right?
Yeah.
The book really digs into identity and this idea of duality. Like, Kafka is all intellectual, always in his head with those big existential questions. But Nakata is way more intuitive, almost like a child.
Yeah. You're right, like two sides of being human. They're both looking for meaning in this world that just feels so, I don't know, chaotic.
And their like individual paths of self-discovery kind of become linked,
Yeah,
showing how even totally different lives can be connected.
exactly.
Makes you wonder if they're like destined to meet
Right.
and what'll happen when they do. But hold on, this is another big theme we can't skip. Loneliness and that need for connection. Murakami's characters, man, they often feel so isolated, like they're desperate for real, genuine connections.
Oh, totally. You really feel that longing throughout the whole book. Kafka finds some peace in the library, but it becomes more than just a place with books. It's a safe space. And that's where he meets Miss Saeki.
Ah, Masieki. Such a mysterious character.
Right. She kind of embodies this power of art and memory, how they shape who we are.
And she helps Kafka face his past,
Yeah.
find meaning in it all. But there's also this tension, like some kind of forbidden,
Attraction.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Adds a whole other layer to their connection.
For sure. Miss Psyche is so important to Kafka's journey, but their connection, is full of like psychological twists. And you know that dark prophecy, right? The one where Kafka's supposed to kill his father and be with his mother.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the whole Miss Psyche thing brings all that subconscious stuff right to the surface. Like, is he looking for a mother figure or is it something more?
So deep. It's not just escaping his fate. He's got to face those primal urges, understand what's driving his actions, psychologically.
Totally.
And speaking of facing the subconscious, we got to talk about the symbolism that's just everywhere in this book.
Oh, it's like every object, every image means something deeper. You got to decode it like a secret language.
Okay, so decode this, the library. What's the deeper meaning there?
So the library is more than a building. It's like a symbol of knowledge. It's where Kafka starts to like really understand his past and figure out who he is.
Okay, makes sense. But what about the talking cats? Come on, they got to be more than just a weird detail, right?
Oh, definitely. Cats, I mean, they've always had this like mystical vibe in different cultures, right? They
Yeah.
connect us to the unseen world.
Whoa.
So the fact that Nakata can talk to them, it shows he's like super sensitive. He sees reality in a way that goes beyond logic. Through those cats, he gets knowledge that we regular folks just wouldn't.
Like he's tapped into some secret wisdom.
Right. And then there's the magic stone. It's like a portal, blurring what's real and what's magical.
Trippy?
Totally. It shows that change is possible, but it can be dangerous to go beyond what you
A
know.
little bit of a warning.
Maybe. Both Kafka and Nakata find this stone at important times in their journeys. It's like stepping into the unknown is like Crucial for growth, but also risky.
Big risk, big reward.
Exactly.
So it's like a reminder that real change takes guts. You gotta face the shadows, the uncertainty, and leave your comfort zone.
You got it.
And speaking of shadows, there's the forest. Every time Kafka goes in there, it's like he's entering a whole other reality. Logic disappears.
Yeah.
It's all instincts and desires.
Yeah, the forest, it's such a strong symbol of the subconscious, where dreams and reality kind of blend together. For Kafka, it becomes a place of, like, tests and confrontations. He has to face his fears and decide what path he's going to take.
Like the forest is a mirror showing his inner struggles. His deepest fears and desires are like real physical things in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and we can't forget the raining fish. What's with that crazy image?
Oh man, the raining fish. That's like peak Murakami weirdness. It's where everything gets turned upside down. It's a powerful image, right? It reminds you that you can't control everything. Sometimes life is just absurd and you gotta roll with it.
Embrace the chaos.
Exactly. Embrace the chaos.
We've talked about the big themes, the symbols, all that. But what about the little details? The stuff that makes Kafka on the Shore so, I don't know, unsettling and mysterious.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
Like Kafka, he's obsessed with working out right. And he's got this strict diet. It's like he's prepping for a fight, but we don't know what kind.
That's interesting. You're right. It's like this underlying anxiety. He wants to control his destiny, you know? Thinks if he can control his body, he can control his life.
Yeah, like trying to find order in a world that's completely random.
Exactly. It's futile, of course,
Yeah.
but it shows how much he's struggling with that prophecy hanging over him.
And what about the food? Murakami's descriptions are so vivid, but also kind of weird. Like Kafka eating mackerel and sardines every single morning.
Oh, yeah. Food in Murakami's books, it's never just about eating. It's symbolic, you know? Sensual, even disturbing sometimes.
What?
In Kafka's case, that repetitive diet, maybe it reflects his emotional state, you know? Like a self-imposed emptiness that mirrors what's going on inside. Or maybe it's just about control. Like, that's the one thing he can actually control.
Makes you think about what you're eating, huh?
Right.
But then there's Nakata. He just seems to find food everywhere he goes, no problem. People are always feeding him. It's like he's being guided or something.
Nakata's whole journey is about going with the flow. He's just in the moment, accepting whatever comes his way, doesn't fight for anything. And that includes how he eats. He doesn't go looking for food, it just comes to him.
Like the universe is taking care of him.
Yeah, like his innocence, his openness, it just draws people to him. They want to help. He's not driven by ambition or anything, so he can just receive without, pushing back.
And speaking of places that offer refuge, we have to talk about the library. It's not just a shelter for Kafka. It's practically a character itself, like it shapes his whole journey.
Oh, for sure. The library in Kafka on the Shore, it's this safe haven, a place to learn. And ultimately, it's like a doorway to transformation. And that's where he meets Miss Saeki. She's got all this wisdom, but also this deep sense of loss.
Their connection, it's so intense and, I don't know, ambiguous. Like, is it motherly? Is it romantic? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, you're right. It's one of the most fascinating parts of the book. The whole question of whether Miss Saeki is actually his mother, it just hangs there in the air. And the fact that Kafka is drawn to her on so many levels, well, it just plays into those Oedipal themes we talked about.
He's both drawn to her and scared of her at the same time.
Exactly. It's psychological, right? But it's also through Miss Saeki, through her own experiences with grief and loss, that Kafka starts to understand the power of art and memory. She helps him navigate his past, make sense of it.
She's a guide helping him heal.
Yeah, a guide. And speaking of guides, we can't forget those talking cats. They're more than just a fun little detail. They have a real purpose, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. They add this whole magical element. They see the world in a totally different way, more intuitive, less logical.
Right. And Nankata's ability to talk to them, it shows just how sensitive he is to things most people miss. He's connected to something bigger than himself.
Like he speaks a language we've forgotten, gets information we'd never have access to.
Exactly. The cats guide him, help him fulfill his purpose, whatever that is.
And their names. So witty, so playful. It adds a little humor to a pretty dark story. Like Mimi, the Siamese, she's super philosophical.
Right. And Otsuka, the tabby, who's obsessed with lost and found stories.
I love it.
It reminds you that even with all these serious themes and stuff, Murakami never loses his sense of humor. He wants us to see the funny side of life, the unexpected.
Embrace the absurdity.
Exactly. And speaking of unexpected characters, we got to talk about that boy named Crow. He's
Yeah.
like Kafka's alter ego, right? Encouraging him, challenging him, always pushing him to face his fears.
Yeah, he's a tough one to figure out. What do you make of him?
Well, he's like the shadow self. He embodies all of Kafka's fears, his desires, the wild part of him. He's a manifestation of the subconscious, urging Kafka to embrace his destiny, even the dark parts.
Wow. Okay, so it's like he's saying, you can't run from who you are, even if it's scary.
Exactly.
And their conversations, they're so cryptic, so full of double meanings. Classic Murakami, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You're left with this feeling that something big has been revealed, but you can't quite grasp it.
That's exactly it. The boy named Crow, he's a catalyst for Kafka's growth. Makes him confront those inner demons and choose his path.
So it's not just escaping the prophecy. It's about like integrating those darker parts of himself and becoming whole. That's a journey we can all relate to, right?
Absolutely. Kafka on the Shore, it's about transformation, finding yourself, accepting the good and bad within you. But before we get to the ending and how it all unfolds, maybe we should pause for a second. Let everything sink in.
Yeah, good idea. We've covered a lot. The characters, the symbols, how Murakami blends reality with like the surreal. But the real test is the ending. That's where we see how it all comes together, what happens to our main guys.
Definitely. The ending of Kafka on the Shore, it's as mysterious and thought-provoking as the rest of the book. It wraps everything up, but not in a way you'd expect. It challenges everything we think we know about reality, about who we are, about fate itself.
All right, we're back, and we're finally at the ending of Kafka on the Shore. We've gone through this maze of symbols, wrestled with some heavy themes, and met some truly strange characters.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Now we're at the final mystery, the ending. So how does Murakami wrap up these crazy narratives?
Well, like a lot of his work, the ending of Kafka on the Shore is hard to put into words. It doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow or answer all the questions. It's more like it leaves you thinking.
Okay, I like that. Tell me more. What happens to Kafka and Nakata? Do they find any kind of resolution?
They do, but not in a typical happy ending way. Kafka, after facing his past and accepting that darkness inside him, he comes out of the forest, like completely changed. He's not afraid of the prophecy anymore. He understands that fate is complicated and he has choices to make.
So it's not about avoiding fate, but about figuring out how to navigate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Nakata, through a series of events that honestly make no logical sense, he does what he's meant to do. He opens this, metaphysical door, lets Kafka through it, and that's how Kafka breaks free from that prophecy. But it's a sacrifice for Nakata.
What do you mean? What happens to him?
He kind of dissolves, he becomes part of the universe again, those forces he's always been connected to. But it's not a sad ending. It's more like a spiritual completion. He was meant to guide Kafka, and he did.
That's beautiful, but also kind of sad. Letting go is a powerful thing. But what about Kafka? Does he come back to the regular world? Does he ever find out about his family, his past?
Kafka chooses to go back to the world he left, but he's not the same. He's got the weight of his past, he knows who he really is, but he also understands himself and his place in the universe better. As for his parents, well, that's a mystery Murakami leaves open. We never really know the truth about them. Some things are better left unanswered, maybe?
So maybe it's the searching that matters, not necessarily finding all the answers.
Maybe so. But I can't stop thinking about that prophecy. Did Kafka really escape it? Or did he fulfill it in some way we didn't expect? That's what's so great about Murakami's writing. He plays with us, He messes with those traditional story structures and makes us think about fate and free will in a whole new way. Even the prophecy itself has different meanings. Maybe Kafka did, metaphorically speaking, kill his father and be with his mother, confronting those deep desires and then breaking away from his family. Or maybe the prophecy was never meant to be literal, just something to push Kafka on his journey.
So it's up to each reader to figure it out, to find their own meaning in it.
Exactly. And that's what makes Kafka on the Shore such a good book, even though it's tough. It stays with you, makes you think, makes you want to go back and read certain parts again. It sparks conversations, arguments even. You just keep thinking about it.
Sounds like an invitation to dive into our own subconscious, to explore the mysteries inside ourselves and the world around us.
That's a great way to put it. If you're going to read Kafka on the Shore for the first time, be open-minded, don't expect simple answers, be ready to be confused, challenged, and maybe even a little scared. It'll change you, I promise.
Well said. Kafka on the Shore, it's not an easy read. It asks a lot of you. Your attention, your imagination, your willingness to face some tough stuff about being human. But if you're willing to take the risk, it's a journey you won't forget. It's a masterpiece that stays with you.
And who knows, maybe if you listen close enough, you might hear those talking cats whispering secrets from your own subconscious.
That wraps up our deep dive into Kafka on the Shore. Hope you've enjoyed exploring this bizarre and wonderful novel with us. And hey, out there in the real world, keep your eyes peeled for those raining fish. You never know what crazy stuff might be happening right over your head.